Hello, welcome along. So, Khârn the Betrayer, one of the truly great characters of the Warhammer 40k universe, a blood-soaked monster, raving lunatic, berserker, champion of Khârn, etc. Famous for so many things, killing people mainly, but of course particularly for being so deeply insane and driven to kill that he even kills those closest to him if necessary, because he hasn't got anyone else to kill. Who was Khan before he was the betrayer? Before he was a champion of Khârn? So we'll go back to the Heresy. Well, go back even pre-Heresy. Who is he? So Khan's story really starts in the Horus Heresy books with him meeting Angron. That's really his kind of entrance into the story. So Angron is famously unstable, shall we say, as a Primarch. And when he was first found by the Emperor, of course, he got essentially abducted by the Emperor during a final battle on his home world, where he was going to, in his mind, die with honor with his comrades who he had fought this rebellion against their slave masters. So they were gladiators forced to fight from birth, and they built up this kind of deep bond, and he had great respect for these people. And then the Emperor basically snatches them away from all this, lets them die, and so you can imagine Angron is in quite a rage. So famously, he essentially refuses to take on this job that the Emperor's now presenting him with, of being the leader of this legion. And he has a complete disrespect for the legion. He thinks of them as just as the Emperor's lackeys, and they have no honor, and there's no reason why he would want to even associate with them. And he's just full of rage and remorse for what's happened, and he's unconsolable, and he's basically locked in a cargo hold like some monster. And a series of captains and other senior officers, what is then the Warhounds, go into this room, this cargo hold, to try and persuade him to take up this role as the leader of the Legion. And no one can do it until Khârn has a go. So he only gets to do it because everyone else before him is dead, because they just get killed brutally by Angron. So Khârn's the 8th person to try this, and of course this is the sacred number of Khârn, so that's kind of preempting this fall to Khârn. But there is a bit more to it than that. So Khârn is able to talk Angron round, essentially while being brutally beaten to the point of near death. His kind of calm bravery, and he manages to kind of trigger something in Angron that gets Angron to think of him slightly like, oh, he's a bit like those people that I was taken from, those comrades of mine that I did respect. And maybe there's a future here where this legion could be that new group that I'm part of. And so he kind of shows that there is something there to be respected, which Angron couldn't see before, and so he sees them in a slightly different light, and that's why he allows himself to be persuaded, essentially, to not keep killing them every time he sees them. It's a low bar, but if you can persuade Angron to not kill you on sight, you've made some significant steps. So after this, at some point, Angron makes him his equerry. So that's basically his personal assistant in many ways. He's like his confidant, sort of closest contact within the Legion. It's a job that most Primarchs have given to. They have someone in their Legion that does this, who's usually a very respected and senior leader. Often it's not the kind of the person that is leading the Legion in the field. That might be a first captain or something. But in this case, Khârn is also the kind of the most senior officer at this one, once he's made equerry. Through the time of the Great Crusade, the World Eaters are doing their job for the Emperor, doing it a little bit too much zeal, maybe killing a few too many civilians, but they are doing it, and they don't really do anything particularly out of line, even if they go a bit too far a few times, of course, and they have to be sanctioned a few times, they have to be warned, but never really stops Angron from being the way he is. And all this time, Khârn's doing his job, and he is renowned, builds up this reputation as a great warrior. One, two, being a bit unstable, as you can imagine for a world eater, that's normal. And maybe not holding back Angron as much as he should. But I would argue that he's much more subtle than he's given credit for. This is Khârn, because he's literally walking around with a ticking time bomb in Angron. Like, it's so easy during this period to set him off. Like, he'll go crazy in an instant and kill people. Doesn't matter who they are, like instantly. And even his Primarch brothers struggled to have any kind of positive influence on him. So you can imagine, as an Astarte, he's walking on eggshells all the time, trying to think, well, okay, if I say this slightly wrong thing here, he's going to go berserk. And he's always managed to survive. He manages to survive in the presence of Angron for a very long period of time. So I would say that Khârn has a lot of sort of intelligence and subtlety that he's not given credit for during this period. He actually is walking the line perfectly, keeping Angron just enough in check to not do the absolute stupidest things and not kill him and various other people that are around him, mostly obviously his own legion, but only any allies and so on. He's trying to walk that line, and he is doing it relatively successfully. It's just that you might look at the results and think, oh, he's just going off and indulging Angron and killing loads of people, just chasing around the battlefield, killing people. But actually, he was doing that because you can't. If Angron thinks he's being manipulated, or someone is resisting in some way, that he would then jump on that, and that will become the new problem. It's a bit like trying to talk a drunk person down by telling them they're drunk. That doesn't work. It just makes them angry. And so, if Angron, you can't tell Angron, you're getting a little bit too angry now. That's not going to help. So, Khârn had his way, and it worked basically. It works as well as anything would have worked. So that's the point I'm trying to get to here. He did the only thing he could do, and got the best possible results in a very bad situation. Now, he also worked quite closely with the Torah Sarin, the captain of the flagship of the World Eaters fleet, and she was also incredibly gifted in the sense that she managed to live this long near Angron, and. Well, actually, not just Angron, because unlike Khârn, she was also at risk from pretty much anybody in the Legion who would randomly get a bit too angry because she said something wrong and then kill her. But she managed to survive amongst the World Eaters, even into the Heresy. and beyond. That's impressive. So anyway, the point is that Khârn and her actually worked quite well together in terms of trying to smooth out some of the bad decisions that Angron would make, and trying to influence him without provoking him by trying to influence him. So they did that very, very well. So I think he kind of deserves a lot more credit as a thinker than people give him. Now, the other thing about Khârn is he's famous for fighting, obviously, for single combat, for dueling people. But he doesn't actually like dueling, really. He liked to fight real fights. He didn't like to fight what he considered pointless fights, basically. He didn't like. So famously, the World Eaters did a lot of sparring duels that were in their fighting pits, where they would build up skill and show courage, etc. But he didn't actually seem to take much part in that. And when he did, he didn't fight with much enthusiasm, and didn't have a great record because he didn't particularly want to be there. But when he was on the battlefield, then he would outstrip all of his comrades. So he was the one that was the most impressive on the actual field, where he was trying to kill people rather than get to first blood or whatever. And he actually fought a few quite big, famous fights where he lost, which is another thing that was interesting about Khârn, because although he's famous for being possibly the most incredibly dangerous individual fighter, he loses, obviously, famously to Sigismund, who kills him near the end of the Heresy. Well, I suppose it's near the end of the Heresy in the Siege of Terror. He loses to Gabriel Loken, who's one of the big loyalist heroes of the Heresy, very near right at the beginning of the Heresy, actually. So kind of the Heresy period is kind of, for Khârn, is kind of bookended by two losses. And he kind of loses those fights for the same reason, which is his incredible rage. Although it's a kind of benefit in many ways because it gives him exceptional superhuman strength, endurance, pain resistance, complete lack of fear, all the things that you get from being an Astarte, but exaggerated even more. It also makes him vulnerable in some ways as well because he just can't think clearly. He also loses a fight for similar reasons in the middle, rocks off in the middle of the Heresy period to Nasir Amit, the flesh terror of the Blood Angels. So, and funny enough, that fight happened because Sanguinius is trying to teach the flesh terror how that going too far down that path of giving into rage is actually a bad thing and won't make you less effective. And it does teach him that, and he becomes, although he is quite a similar character in many ways, personality to Khârn, he's able to hold it back just enough to avoid him ever going complete berserker, sort of. Well, except for that one time when he kills a load of Space Wolves. Don't worry about that. Yeah, but anyway, those three people are three of the greatest individual fighters in the history of the Imperium, probably, and two of them go on to be chapter masters. So these are very impressive people. Anyway, going back to Khârn. The other great thing about Khârn during this period is, of course, is his relationship with Argel Tal of the Wordbearers. So they form this really kind of great friendship. Really, I mean, these are two people that are, well, one's a borderline lunatic with these the butcher's nails driving him insane at almost all times, to the point of that you can only get any sort of relief from the pain they cause by actually killing people or losing himself in the rage. And the other is possessed by a demon and has this inner voice of this demon who always just wants to cause massive destruction. And yet they managed to form an actual genuine friendship during this time. And I think that's for two reasons. One, because in many ways, the Butcher Snails and this demon inside of Argel Tal are kind of the same thing. There's this dark side to them. They both have that they're fighting all the time, and they can bond over that. But also, their underlying personalities are quite similar in that they're kind of like they're the right-hand men of their Primarchs. They're always loyal to their Primarch up to a fault. The things that they do, the eventual fall to chaos, really is because they're loyal to their Primarch, and they're also loyal to their men, and they're trying to do the best they can in really bad situations. And I think they also bond over that. They both have this deep kind of sense of honor and as warriors, and they bond over these two kind of similar aspects of their personalities. And of course it eventually leads to the point where Erebus betrays Khârn and kills Argel Tal, and this leads to Erebus getting the life beaten out of him. He doesn't die, unfortunately. He managed to teleport away, but he does get one hell of a beating, which is great to read. It's well written. It's you want Erebus to get, because he is an irredeemable cunt, isn't he? Let's be honest. So it's great to see him get his comeuppance for a little bit at least, and also there's this genuine, really genuine rage that Khârn has at that moment because his friend has been killed. Not because it's just rage for rage's sake. He's not losing himself to the nails. It's actually, right, you've done this terrible thing, and I'm going to punish you for it. Which is kind of, it's quite an interesting twist on his character, because that's just not what he's known for. I think the other important thing about Khârn throughout the Heresy really is you can see there's this tragic underlying story of him. He doesn't want to give in to the rage. He actually hates that. He hates the way it makes him, he loses control. He doesn't want that. It takes away who he really is, and he can see that he's losing himself more and more, and he does try to fight it. And at times when he's close to actually deciding that he's got to go turn away from it, but he eventually can't make that decision, and he does obviously eventually slip into full berserker. It's interesting with the World Eaters, because I think it's an automatic assumption that the World Eaters were just basically obviously going to become berserkers and fall to Khârn. But actually, there are quite a lot of individual members of the Legion that don't fall, and so famously, so many of them that they have to be killed, wiped out by the other half of the Legion, or probably more than half, more like say 2/3 to a third. but they have to be killed in quite large numbers on Istvan III when the World Eaters reveal themselves to be traitors, and so there is a reasonable chance that Khârn could have avoided turning to chaos. He could have become one of the loyalist um, World Eaters, who, as I said, there were quite a lot of them. He would have probably died on Istvan III if he had been loyalist, or maybe even Angron might have killed him before then because they were closer. It was spent more time together. So if Angron's trying to turn the Legion, if he knows his closest confidant in the Legion is not going to turn, he probably would have killed him already. But there are plenty of examples of World Eaters that do remain loyal, even though they've got they all have the butcher's nails, and they've got the same problems that Khârn has. His real issue is not so much the butcher's nails, although that eventually leads him into madness. It's that he's intensely loyal to Angron, and that really that it's something he can't move away from. Well, there is of course the fact that the reason Erebus kills Argel Tal is because he foresees that he will stop Khârn from fully embracing Khârn and going down that route to become a champion of Khârn. So he's like, so obviously, if there is a reasonable possibility for Khârn to not become this berserker, to become the champion of Khârn, maybe that means he could have turned away from chaos in a kind of and even away from the traitors in a similar way to Sevatar, who eventually kind of again this loyalty to his Primarch has taken him down this route, and he finds himself as one of the traitors. But he could have easily not been, and eventually he turns away from that. But you could have seen maybe with Khârn doing a similar thing if him and Argel Tal had remained together for longer, and they could have decided, actually, we can see that this isn't the path we want to keep going down, and it was just loyalty to our Primarchs that got us where we are, but we can step back from that. Right, so yeah, that is Khârn the Betrayer before he became the Betrayer. I think again one of the great characters of the Heresy period, incredibly well written, and particularly in the book Betrayer, and his relationship with Argel Tal and his tragic slip into madness essentially is a really important and interesting story arc within the greater the Heresy as a book series. So definitely, if you haven't read a book, go and do it. Please like and subscribe, comment, and share this video. Thank you very much. See you next time.